Hey, this is Lee Balcom, and I want to talk today about four different places that I think a lot of people think are supposed to be like dominoes, right? You hit the first place and it all falls in place and everything comes together. And the first place that people are looking at is the apology, right? So let's talk a little bit about what these 4 points are. First is the apology, second is forgiveness, third is trust, and fourth is reconciliation. And people think that it runs right through there. So if you apologize, there's forgiveness, which leads to trust, which leads to reconciliation. Here's the bad news. That's not what always happens. If you understand this dynamic, then you have a better way of understanding what's going on in the process and working through it. The problem is, many times people think that they should flow that way. So, what I want to propose today is that these four things, apology, forgiveness, trust, and reconciliation, are actually four different, distinct, and not necessarily connected pieces of the puzzle. So when I say not necessarily connected, that means it's a possibility for there to be connection, but it doesn't have to. So let me tell you what I mean by that. First of all, I am a big proponent of apologies. In fact, I've created an apology formula for people to follow, an apology letter formula for people to follow who are trying to get some traction in their relationship when they go, you know what, I've done some things wrong. So, first of all, behind that is the realization that there are probably some places where you fell short. Now, let me say it more clearly. There are some places that you fell short in your relationship. How do I know that? Because we all have places where we fall short in relationships. And we all have places where we can step into responsibility. And responsibility is being able to say, hey, you know what? I was wrong there, and I'm going to do repair work. I'm going to do what I can to make things better. And so what I've done over the last couple of decades is help people understand how to write a very effective and powerful apology letter. It's one of the things that I put in my VIP program for a central reason. I want people to have some other understandings before they do that letter. And so the VIP allows me to do some higher level training for people to help them understand how to get through there. Now, if you don't have my system, I've got good news for you. When you purchase my system, I offer you a free week of VIP. You have to take me up on it then to take action on that. But I give you a free week because I want you to have the best resources and best capacity of making progress, including full access to my apology letter formula. Now, I create that because I think it is important both in an internal and an external process. So internally, it is helpful for us to say, hey, where do I need to spend some time doing work? Where do I need to make some changes in my life? How do I need to take responsibility for where I've been and what I do? And how do I do some reparative work, right? Part of what is the process at the end of an apology is making changes, because one of the mistakes that people make when they apologize is they then go repeat that mistake. And so if you apologize and you repeat that mistake, if you do it again, you in many ways negate the apology. And every time you do that, it makes it a weaker and weaker apology. And that's what often happens for people is they've made the same mistake so many times that now the apology just doesn't hold a whole lot of power for the person who's hearing the apology. Okay, so the step one in this domino is an apology. So what's the problem? You can apologize and the person not accept it. That can be the end of the process, right? You can apologize and the person go, I don't care. Now, let me take it a step further, because the next step is forgiveness. Forgiveness, and it's kind of like this ping pong match, right? Forgiveness is when the other person says, hey, I understand. I'm going to let that go because I understand things differently. Now, this is such an important process of forgiveness that I actually wrote a book called The Forgive Process. And the reason I wrote this book is because after so many times as a therapist and a coach, I realized that not finding a way of forgiving was what kept many people stuck in their life. And so I wrote a process of how you can find forgiveness for whatever's happened in your life, because that's domino number 2. And forgiveness is the process where you don't forget what happened, but you understand it differently. You have a different understanding of what that process was about and what it was for the other person, right? And so there is a shift in understanding that allows you to move forward. If we don't apologize, we stay stuck like that anchor. It anchors us to these events in our past, and we can't move beyond them. So that is the second domino in the stack. And the thing is, you don't have to have an apology to forgive. That's why I wrote the book. And so now already the dominoes are completely separate. You can apologize and the person not forgive you. Somebody may not apologize to you and you can still forgive. You see how they're now separate? Now, is it easier, more effective for you to forgive when somebody has apologized? Absolutely. But it's not required. You can choose to forgive anyone at any time for anything. I know that's a big statement, right? Because you decide that that allows you to move forward with freedom. That allows you to not be held back by that event. Okay, so forgiveness is that second domino. Apology is the first domino, and they're already disconnected. You see how we're moving forward here? So then there is the next piece, which is trust. And here's where it's disconnected. You can apologize to me, I can forgive you, and I could still choose not to trust you ever again, and vice versa. I might apologize, you might forgive me, and still choose not to trust me anymore. Completely separate. But let's take it one step further. You could choose to trust me without forgiving me, and without an apology. Here's what I've realized about trust. Trust is a gift. You give somebody trust. When we talk about how could I earn your trust back, you can do things that are trustworthy. You can act in completely trustworthy ways and the person still not give you trust because it's a gift. And the problem with trust as a gift is that some people make it way too valuable and some people make it way too cheap. And the question is how you do that, right? So if to make it way too valuable, maybe somebody broke your trust in some way, small way, big way, whatever, and you go, never again will I trust you ever again, even if you've completely changed your life and everything you do from this day forward is trustworthy. Not going to do it. That makes it a very valuable, very overvalued piece. Then there are those who make it way too cheap. Trust is broken repeatedly, and they choose to trust again. They just will not learn the lesson of broken trust. And so they end up trusting people they should not. Now, the people who refuse to trust end up not trusting people they should. And so both of those pieces are in play, but they are completely separate. You don't forgive, but you can trust. You could forgive and trust, or you could forgive and not trust. All of those pieces are possible, which brings us to the last domino, reconciliation. What we think is supposed to happen is we apologize, we give forgiveness, we build trust, and we reconcile. I could trust somebody and decide never to reconcile with them. I could reconcile with somebody and never trust them again. And so let's take the first one. I could learn to trust you. Like, if there is a couple and maybe they have kids and they go, you know what, I trust you to take care of our kids, but we're not getting back together. We'll be divorced and I'll trust you to take care of the kids and I'll trust you to maybe other things, but we're not getting back together. Then there are those who reconcile. They stay in the relationship. They get back together, but they never have trust with their spouse again. That is a tough recipe because if you've reconciled, if you've come back together and you're living your life reconciled, that you've conciliatory together again, reconciled, but you choose not to trust, then always you both are feeling like you're on guard. like, I can't get your trust, and you're going, and I'm not going to trust you, so I'm going to look with suspicion on everything. And in the process, you keep finding places where you do need some trust and you don't have it, or you do want some trust and you can't find it. And in the process, we get into a stuck point. Now, what's my reason for bringing this up? Well, because it's never enough just to think, oh, all I've got to do is apologize. Many times I'll watch somebody and their spouse is still, either not forgiving or not trusting or not reconciling, and they're going, what do you want from me? I apologized. And what they want to have happen is, I apologized, therefore you forgive me, therefore we trust again, and therefore we reconcile. Boom, 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 boom. And it doesn't happen that way. And so the reason I bring it up is because you want to understand that these are 4 distinct points on the process. And you have to work through each of those points one by one. You have to apologize, right? And I think that it's incredibly important to make sure that you are truly invested in your apology. That you're truly invested in your apology, so much so that you will make amends or reparations where you can and make sure that you don't repeat that again. That's the best way of making sure there's an apology, is by going, I'm not repeating this, right? That was a point in time, it's gone. I'm not going to go back to that. So that's an important part of apology. Forgiving is on the part of the person who has been hurt, harmed. And that hurt or harm can be seen in many ways, but it really is a point for that person to say, okay, I understand things differently, I understand you differently, and I understand where we go from here differently. There's a different understanding of it. There are lots of myths about forgiveness that I talk about in the book, and the big one is forgive and forget. I don't believe in that. I also don't believe that forgiving somebody lets them off the hook. In reality, it lets you off the hook. It allows you to let go of the anchor and move forward. And so that part is an important process for us all to look at and go, how do I find more places of forgiveness so I'm not held back? And then there's the trust. And to make sure that trust is something that is earned appropriately. It's not too expensive. It's not too cheap. That you grant trust because the person is proving themselves trustworthy. They're doing things to rebuild the trust. Reconciliation requires both people to say, okay, now we're going to move forward in a different way. And I want that to be a very clear point of this. Reconciliation is not, well, then we'll just go back to the way things were. That is not going to be effective long term. You have to find a new path forward. You have to find new understandings. You have to find new ways of relating to each other that allow you to find healing in that peace. So the next time you fall into this trap, remember these are 4 distinct pieces: an apology, forgiveness, trust, reconciliation. They all can operate separately. You can choose to reconcile without trust, without an apology, without forgiving. You can choose to trust without reconciling, an apology, or forgiveness. You can forgive without an apology or trust or reconciliation, and you can apologize without any forgiveness, trust, or reconciliation. And you can pick and choose. You can do 1 out of the 4, 2 out of the 4, 3 out of the 4, or best of all, 4 out of the 4. But you want to make sure that if it's 4 out of the 4, you've actually consciously chosen how to walk through that and you figured out how to do it. If you need help with that, especially with that way of apologizing, please check out my system at savethemarriage.com. That's savethemarriage.com. If you passed on that, and you need to figure out what to do, drop me an email at lee@savethemarriage.com, lee@savethemarriage.com. And if you are like most people and you know there are some things that you need to to forgive, then check out my book at theforgiveprocess.com. That's theforgiveprocess.com. This is Lee Balkin wishing you the best as you work and you focus and you get there to save your marriage.